Today, we are breaking down the exact algorithm for building a foolproof emergency response plan. We're going to treat this critical, literal life-saving document as a simple step-by-step process. Think of it kind of like filling out a master blueprint. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of what-ifs when it comes to workplace safety, well, you're in the right place, because we're going to simplify this whole process down to its core. Okay, let's just dive right in. Let's start with a totally blank slate here and define what an ERP actually is. What's really interesting is the emphasis on the word system. An ERP isn't just, a list of phone numbers taped to a break room fridge. It's a documented system that brings order to utter chaos by firmly establishing the what, who, when, and how. It literally removes the guesswork when every single second counts. To get us there, we'll be following this simple 4-step algorithm to fill out our document. Phase 1, assess the risk. Phase 2, assigning roles. Phase 3, the action plan. And finally, Phase 4, continuous improvement. We'll track a hypothetical workplace emergency along the way to see exactly how this works in practice.
So, starting off with Phase 1, assess the risk.
This is where we begin our blueprint. We've got to take inventory of exactly what hazards we need to prepare for. An ERP has to anticipate a vast array of potential chaos. We're talking about everything from fires and explosions to structural collapses, natural disasters, and even security emergencies. Your document has to start by identifying which of these specific nightmares are actually credible threats to your environment. You can't prepare for absolutely everything, but you definitely must prepare for the realistic somethings.
To explain this simply and clearly, let's use a running example. We're going to imagine a hypothetical chemical gas release at a facility. Let's see exactly how we fill out our blueprint for this specific, highly dangerous threat.
For our gas release, we follow these 5 sequential steps to conduct an emergency risk assessment. First up, determine the likelihood. Like, how often do we actually handle this chemical? Second, assess the consequences. Is it toxic? Is it flammable? Both? Third, identify vulnerable people. Who's working in that specific wing of the building? Fourth, determine the required controls, such as ventilation shutoffs. And fifth, assess our available resources. By just filling out these 5 simple steps, we have systematically mapped out the exact profile of our chemical threat.
Moving right along to Phase 2, assigning roles.
We have to determine exactly who is responsible for what when the alarms finally sound. Why? Well, because chaos absolutely thrives in a leadership vacuum. In emergencies, the bystander effect kicks in. Basically, everyone subconsciously assumes someone else is in charge. Your document has to actively fight this psychological trap by clearly defining all these critical roles, so everyone knows their exact job. From the incident controller leading the charge, all the way down to the fire team, first aiders, and evacuation wardens. Every single person on this list has a distinct, non-overlapping job to execute.
Grounding this back in our chemical spill example, we would formally assign an incident controller in our document to take absolute charge of the scene. Simultaneously, we dictate that the communication team immediately alerts the rest of the facility. The crucial takeaway here is that when the gas leaks, nobody is looking around asking, who's calling this in? The algorithm has already made that decision for them.
Which brings us to Phase 3, the action plan.
Here we define the logical flow of actions, procedures, and routing during the crisis itself. Communication is the backbone of any crisis response. The plan must methodically define what the alarm signals sound like, establish secure communication channels like two-way radios or PA systems, set emergency telephone numbers, and honestly, most importantly, set clear escalation rules. If the situation degrades, the document must explicitly state at what point we escalate this from a localized spill to a full-scale emergency. Next, you have to draft specific emergency procedures for each credible scenario you identified back in Phase 1. This means detailing the immediate actions, mapping out the medical responses, establishing the notification processes, and defining firefighting limitations. And by that, I mean knowing exactly when a fire is just too big to fight. Let's look at how this builds our chemical release document. This section of our plan would explicitly outline the shutdown requirements to isolate the gas valves. It would detail the proper spill control methods for that exact chemical and outline the precise triggers for when to abandon containment and initiate a full building evacuation. It's essentially a precise recipe for survival. Now, if that evacuation trigger is pulled, the algorithm requires mapped-out safe evacuation routes and assembly points, also known as muster points. This brilliantly illustrates a really common oversight. These points must steer clear of smoke paths, secondary hazards like falling debris, and crucially, they have to be away from emergency vehicle paths.
I mean, you absolutely cannot have evacuated staff blocking the fire engines that are trying to save the building.
Once evacuated, a rigid headcount algorithm must take over. First, everyone hits the muster point. Second, supervisors report missing or injured personnel directly to the incident controller. And third, and guys, this is an absolute non-negotiable rule, absolutely no unauthorized re-entry is permitted. You never, ever send an untrained employee back into a toxic gas cloud to find a missing colleague. The document absolutely forbids it.
To execute all of these actions, the document must inventory a massive array of emergency equipment. We're talking everything from fire extinguishers and eye wash stations to breathing apparatus and backup power. But just writing it down isn't enough. The ERP mandates that this equipment must be highly accessible, routinely inspected, and meticulously maintained. You also need specific arrangements for high-risk activities. If your facility has confined spaces or work at height hazards, your rescue plan for those must be fully documented. Plus, you need an up-to-date, clearly displayed contact list to coordinate with external emergency services. This means having direct lines to hospitals, the police, regulatory authorities, and crucially, even nearby facilities that might need an urgent warning about a spreading gas cloud.
Finally, we arrive at Phase 4, continuous improvement.
This final phase ensures your meticulously crafted document doesn't just sit on a shelf, because let's face it, an algorithm is utterly useless if the computer doesn't know how to run it. In this case, your employees are the ones executing the code. They must be thoroughly trained on their individual responsibilities and participate in regular, highly realistic drills covering everything from fire response to our hypothetical chemical spill containment. They need to build that muscle memory so the procedures just become second nature.
And here is where the real value is generated. After every single drill, or any actual emergency for that matter, you must run a debriefing evaluation. You look at what went well and what completely failed. You evaluate response times, hunt for communication breakdowns, check for equipment flaws, and then you implement corrective actions. You fix the blueprint.
Closing the loop of this algorithm requires meticulously maintaining all related documentation. This means tracking every single risk assessment update, saving every drill report, logging equipment inspections, and keeping a detailed revision history. The document should constantly be evolving based on the hard data you gather from your drills and risk assessments.
When you follow these steps correctly, you don't just end up with a static document that sits on a shelf, completely untested and forgotten. Instead, you create a dynamic, living system that is understood, actively practiced, tested, reviewed, and continuously improved.
As the source text brilliantly summarizes, an ERP's true value lies entirely in its execution. Quote, "An ERP is not just a document. It is a living system that must be understood, practiced, tested, reviewed, and continuously improved. It adapts to your workplace, improves over time, and ultimately does the one job it was designed to do: keep people safe when everything else goes wrong." So, taking a look around your own workplace today, whether it's an office, a warehouse, or a chemical plant, ask yourself, do you actually know when your life-saving algorithm was last put to the test? If you don't know the answer, well, it might just be time to pull that document off the shelf and see if it's still breathing.